So we are getting closer and closer to E3 2021, and with that, you're seeing a bunch of different information come out from acclaimed leakers and some with very credible backgrounds that we have to talk about because there are some big expectations to come from Nintendo's 2021 E3, as we obviously saw them have an extremely light year in 2020 in terms of new software. So today we have to do a full roundtable rumor discussion and how likely I think these things are to come to pass at Nintendo's E3 2021 presentation. What's up, Nation? If it's your first time on the channel, make sure you join Sunbro Nation by subscribing below, hit the like button on this video if you enjoy it today, and make sure you turn on your bell notification icon so you're kept up to date with all the newest gaming news. Now guys, today we are doing really a rumor discussion and a E3 roundup because, as I mentioned, it is getting closer and closer to E3 2021, and we are expecting a lot of big titles from Nintendo. We even recently just had an article where Furukawa actually went on record saying that there is a ton of Switch titles in the works right now, and I think we're expecting to see a lot of them announced at this event. Of course, you don't have to put all your eggs in one basket. We may see Nintendo do some major announcements at E3, but then give us another direct later into the fall to kind of pump up, the rest of the holiday season, then also potentially the Q1 2021 games. But I think they're really going to try to steal the show here, as we know that they had a very light 2020 and we did not see a lot in the way of new software release. Obviously, Animal Crossing New Horizons did fantastic and carried them as far as sales numbers go, and then you had like Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, also Paper Mario Origami King. But outside of those titles, there wasn't a ton of first party Nintendo content. Now, one of the reasons that I'm making the video today is we do have one of the more credible leakers that has been right in a lot of different predictions over the course of time, most notably like predicting all of the Smash characters, which obviously would be very hard to do unless if you're some kind of an insider or have an inside source. This user by the name of Zippo did successfully predict all of those before they were released. They also predicted Mario Origami King back in January of 2020, and we actually saw that game release in July of 2020. So it was not announced whenever he predicted that. So I'm surprised at the track record of this user. I want to talk about, obviously what games are most likely to come out of the leaks and reports that we are seeing float around online, and which ones I think maybe are less likely or at least won't be an E3 timed, because I think there's a lot of games we can talk about and say Nintendo's obviously going to release a sequel to that series at some point. Like the new Donkey Kong rumors, obviously there's going to be a sequel to Donkey Kong. Will it be at E3 or not? Well, that's kind of what I want to discuss in this video today. So that way we can kind of really go into E3 with some solid expectations on what we can expect Nintendo to announce and really get hyped, because we're, like I said, guys, less than a month away from this presentation happening. So I'm very much looking forward to this, but I want to start off with Zippo's predictions and kind of weigh in my 2 cents on when I think we will see these things announced and if they are credible or not. So the first game that Zippo details in his unannounced section of this leak that he recently put out on a blog post online is Metroid 2D. And he does say that there is a Metroid 2D game that was developed by Mercury Steam that is actually completely done and that Nintendo is very happy with, and they are ready to put it out there as soon as they are ready to. It supposedly runs at 60 frames per second, but he does not know what this might be, whether it's a remake or whether it is a port of something like a Samus Returns, which I don't think they're going to do that. I think they'll probably leave that on the 3DS. I would be happy if that's all they gave us. I mean, that was a fantastic game in and of itself, but I was able to play through it on the 3DS. So for me personally, I really hope they do something either brand new, or it could be something like Metroid Zero Missions, which was actually, a remake of the original Metroid. It could be a Super Metroid redone from the ground up, which again, I still think Super Metroid plays fantastic, and I don't think that it necessarily needs a remake at this point. Maybe like further down the line, they could look at that one as something that they could mess with, or it could even be, there's a lot of talk about Metroid Fusion from the Game Boy Advance and that potentially getting redone for the Switch as a 2D Metroid title. I think all of those are less likely than us just getting a brand new Metroid 2D adventure, because I do think that it makes more sense for Nintendo to go in that direction and just give us something entirely new. Of course, that's not, that's just speculation on my part. I do agree with this leak in the sense that I think we're absolutely getting a 2D Metroid announced at this event, regardless of all the other, rumors floating around and what we see of Prime 4 footage at this event or not. All of that stuff I think could be up for debate on if we will see it or not. I think the one that you can definitely take to the bank is a 2D Metroid adventure of some sort. It's obviously Metroid's 35th anniversary as well, and while I don't think Nintendo will make near as big of a deal of that, they may not even acknowledge it, honestly, but I still think they're going to give us some titles from that long-beloved Nintendo franchise. And then my big hope is that if we don't see Prime 4 footage, or even if they just say something like give us a vague update that it's going well on development and it'll be released later into 2022, I think they at least give us this 2D Metroid. And then I really hope, and I'm still predicting, that they will give us the Metroid Prime trilogy, at least a trailer and a release date. And I know we've had a lot of talk recently online about Metroid Prime trilogy because of one of the old retro developers saying that it would be very hard to pull off. But he even said, I'm surprised that people kind of took that as like, oh, it's not going to happen, because he even said, like, if you gave a 4 or 5 team person from retro a full year, that they could probably pull it off in that way. So it's kind of, I think he just thinks that Nintendo wouldn't put the money behind it to actually port this trilogy over, which I don't personally agree with. I think Nintendo would throw the money at this thing because they want to have as many players like ready to go for Metroid Prime 4 when it releases, and one of the best ways to do that would be to show the players what they were missing with those original Prime games that you can't easily play now unless you have a Wii to play Metroid Prime 3, or actually you can play the entire trilogy on the Wii, which would be one way to do it, but you have to go back quite a few years in time to actually be able to do that, and it's not going to look great at a good resolution. So it makes more sense for them to slow down and actually do the Metroid Prime trilogy. So even though that's not in Zippo's leak, he says he only knows of a 2D Metroid, I would still say that it's relatively safe to expect Nintendo to announce Metroid Prime trilogy and for it to come out before Metroid Prime 4. So that's, again, my personal takeaway on that, and I do think that regardless of what we see, we absolutely see Nintendo deliver something around 2D Metroid news at their E3 presentation. And then the next one on Zippo's list is a very exciting one, and one that I do think we will see, and hopefully at E3, and that is a Donkey Kong game that is developed by the same team that gave us Mario Odyssey. And I think that makes a lot of sense for Nintendo to really show some love to Donkey Kong, because I mean, Donkey Kong's in its 40th anniversary, so it's even older than some of these other titles that we're celebrating the 35th anniversary for, and it obviously has a name that pulls weight with most people. Like, you can go down the street and ask most people if they've heard of Mario, and most people say yes. You can ask them if they've heard of Zelda. A bunch of people will say yes, but there's probably a long percentage of people that are just like, I kind of know what Zelda is, I kind of don't. Donkey Kong's kind of up there with Mario in one of those that, because it's been around for so long, people really do know the name, and it really has had some major successful titles over the course of time. Now, this would be a big shift because this will be the first time we've seen Nintendo actually bring Donkey Kong in-house for their own development team, so it's being developed by one of their first-party teams that they own, and that's kind of a big deal in and of itself. Now, there's a lot of information circulating around whether or not this is a 2D game or whether it will be a 3D, and I think the correct term would be 2.5D, because it's obviously going to be, like 3D renders of the characters and stuff, and you may see some 3D sections of the game, but it's not going to be fully like an open world Mario Odyssey type experience. I hope at some point we do get a 3D Donkey Kong, but I think that Donkey Kong is still very tied to the, kind of classic 2D platforming style of games, and I think Nintendo may stick to that formula for this first title that they put out. We could see something more like in the Donkey Kong 64 world, and get a better HD version of kind of what that game was in the future, but there is a bunch of people that are the credible sources that did report on this, that talked to both Nintendo Life and VGC, that they do say that this will be a 2D title. So I would set my expectations for it to be a 2D title. Regardless, I'm just going to be happy to see another Donkey Kong installment, as I very much enjoyed Donkey Kong Country Returns and Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, and now that Nintendo has brought it in-house, that they're developing it themselves with the Odyssey team, I think that, if there's no reason that they can't deliver probably the best Donkey Kong experience we have seen since the old Donkey Kong Country games back on the SNES, which are still my personal favorites. So I hope that we do see some concrete information and a trailer and a release date for Donkey Kong Country, or I think the actual rumor is they're not going to stick to a country name. They're going to actually create something new entirely, but There's no reason that the roster has, obviously grown. The exposure to the roster has grown due to something like Smash and King K. Rool being in Smash. I think that's the perfect time to bring him back as the main, villain in the game that you're going after. So I think that this could be a fantastic game. I'll happily spend $60 on day one for a new Donkey Kong game. So hopefully we do see this announced at E3. I do think it's highly likely with all of the talk and all the rumors from different leakers reporting on it. So this one is one that I would absolutely put at the top of my list to expect Nintendo to talk about at their presentation. And then next up on the list, Zippo does cover that there will be something Fire Emblem. He does not know what, so is this a new game altogether, or will it be something ported over from, the 3DS or remade from even like the Game Boy Advance days? Who knows what we're going to see on this one? Not a lot of information here, so I won't really go into high depth on this one, but we can expect hopefully something Fire Emblem to be at E3, or this could be one of those games that's just further down the road at a future direct. So that remains to be seen. Obviously, Three Houses did come out somewhat recently, so Fire Emblem's really gaining steam as a franchise overall, and there's a ton of hardcore fans that are falling into this universe now. So I think it makes sense for Nintendo to do something Fire Emblem. We just have no more information other than that on what it might be. And then from there it goes straight into a new Mario Party, which is a very controversial one if you think about it, because it makes sense that Nintendo should do something new with Mario Party, as we've been well over 3 years from the original Super Mario Party on the Switch, and it has sold fantastic. So it makes total sense for Nintendo to release a sequel. But then you have something like the massive update that they just randomly gave to Super Mario Party to allow online play for the majority of all their mini games. So it's very weird that Nintendo would slow down, do that update for the base model of Super Mario Party, and then turn around and announce a brand new one. However, this could again be one of those games that is really further in the pipeline, which I think is what I would more predict. I'm not going to predict to see a new Mario Party like a Super Mario Party 2 at E3. I think this is one that would come to us in a fall direct or even a spring direct of 2022, and then we see it released later on into that year, because at that time frame I think it makes a lot more sense. That being said, Nintendo is Nintendo, and they do whatever they want whenever they want, so it's probably more of a Nintendo thing to actually give us an online update and then just for Super Mario Party, and then just turn around and release a brand new Super Mario Party. So nothing's out of the question here with Nintendo, but I think I would put this one more on a likely basis to be further down the line than rather a E3 2021 title. And then from there, you have this leaker actually talking about more 99 games to come. Like, obviously, you've seen it with Tetris and Mario and just different, like, Battle Royale style games, and obviously Pac-Man at this point. So I think this is something that works for Nintendo, and they're comfortable, producing these games, because it's obviously just taking a core classic from the NES era and basically adding in online play and creating a world where you're sending enemies and new obstacles into the other people's world that you're playing with. So I think it's a really cool concept that they can continue to run with, and I hope that they do something like, the original Donkey Kong for this would be great, or something like the original Zelda I think would also be an amazing experience to have on a 99 style game. So this one's not like really an out there prediction. I think we absolutely see Nintendo continue this formula of giving us 99 games to kind of help support their Nintendo Online service going forward. And then a big piece of information from Zippo is that we will absolutely see some mention of Zelda's 35th anniversary at this direct, and we will see at least Wind Waker and Twilight Princess announced, but that he does not have any other information on what games might be a part of this celebration, and that he has heard obviously the rumors of Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask being ported over, but he has zero clue on what Nintendo has planned past the Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, and he also does not know if those games will come in a combo pack or be released individually. I think Nintendo will probably release them individually. I hope we get a combo pack, but this would be the first combo pack they've ever done as a Wii U port that doesn't get released individually. So let's hope they give us both for $60, but I could totally see them doing something where it is two individual titles spaced out about 3 months apart, especially if the next part of this leak that we're about to dive into is true. So you do at least have those two games. We also had, I've covered it multiple times on the channel, but Andy Robinson from VGC, who is a gaming journalist who has a bunch of inside connections, and he doesn't just throw stuff out there that's not accurate. He successfully predicted Mario 3D All-Stars before we knew that was a thing. He actually on record has said that we will absolutely see Wind Waker and Twilight Princess in the year of 2021. So that's about as concrete of a leak as I need to believe something is real. So this part does make sense. I just hope that Nintendo has a bunch else planned, and it does make sense that they would want to keep that extremely under wraps, even from insiders, on what else they have planned for such a big franchise such as Zelda for its 35th anniversary. So hopefully the Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, news comes along with it. Hopefully we get another 2D remake, and then obviously after they get past all that, we'll transition into the next part of the leak, which is Breath of the Wild 2, which I'm still saying will be the show closer for E3 with a gameplay trailer and a reveal. And the news on Breath of the Wild 2 in this leak is that it absolutely will be at the event, but it will not be released in 2021. And I have up to this point been predicting that it will be released in 2021. So I've always said there's a possibility of it sliding out of the holiday window. I think if Nintendo had it their way, it does come out in 2021, but we know Nintendo does do what it needs to do to deliver quality games, and they will continue to delay a project as long as they need to make sure it's ready to go. And that's one thing that I'm really happy that Nintendo does, because we don't have any of those Cyberpunk situations on the Switch like we typically see from other developers and even more frequently on other consoles. Nintendo likes to finish their games before it goes out to make sure that the first time around that you play that game is just as good of an experience as it would be if you played it 5 years from now. So it's totally possible we don't get Breath of the Wild 2 this year, but I still think there's a chance it could happen. And this leaker does kind of say that it's a fluid situation and that that he's not entirely sure, but he's speculating that this game was way more affected by the pandemic than others as far as development timeline. And if that is the case, he's predicting it to be a Q1 2022 release. But then you have to have the conversation, if it really is that, you're launching like 2 open world games from 2 massive franchises in the same quarter, which is very an unlike Nintendo thing to do, because we already have Pokemon Legends Arceus launching in early 2022. Now maybe that game gets pushed back further to the summer, and then Breath of the Wild 2 has its own little spotlight. But I don't think they released these in the same month for sure, but even in the same quarter seems unlikely for Nintendo. So I'm a little bit less likely to believe this one in particular, and it does sound like maybe he just doesn't know where Nintendo is at on the development process, but he thinks that it's more likely to be a 2022 title. So this one could still very easily go either direction. I think if we do see the Switch revision, happen this year, then Nintendo wants to package it alongside of Breath of the Wild 2. I've been saying that all along, and I still think that's their goal. But again, they will do what they need to do. If they have to delay the game to 2022, they absolutely will. But the good news to take away from this at the end of everything, whether you want it to come out this year or you're okay with waiting, the good news is we're actually going to get a trailer, and we will get new gameplay details and a release window. So I think that that's good enough news for me either way. Even if we have to wait longer, I'll be happy to do so, as long as it's a quality game, which I fully believe it will be. Now, the last major game on this list is one that I think we are well overdue for, and that is a new Mario Kart. And this leaker does go on record and say that he is not sure what this is. It could very well be a Mario Kart 8 Deluxe DLC pack, but then he says that it's been in development nonstop for 3 years. So I think you don't develop a DLC pack for something for 3 years, at least, unless if it's just like a DLC pack that runs in the same engine, but it's entirely new, like 8 courses and a bunch of new characters. I don't think that takes 3 years of development. So obviously Mario Kart 8 Deluxe has continued to sell extremely well, and Nintendo knows that whenever they put out the sequel to this, that this will absolutely be another system seller, and especially if they can get it ready for the holiday portion of the sales season, which is absolutely what they're targeting to do, and I believe it's what they will do with the new Mario Kart. It could be called Mario Kart 9. I'm personally hoping that they do another Double Dash mechanic, so maybe they call it New Mario Kart Double Dash or Double Dash 2. I don't care what it is, but I'm personally hoping that that's what we get here. But there is a bunch of rumors and speculation pointing to Nintendo about being finished up with the next installment in the Mario Kart franchise, and it makes total sense to announce that at E3. And if that's their big holiday system seller, if Breath of the Wild 2 is not coming out, I do think that that is one that can still move units that would poise them for a very strong end of 2021. And then maybe that's the game that launches alongside the Switch revision if we see that announced this year. So either way, there's a bunch of exciting information to come from E3, but I want to know your guys' opinions on what you're expecting from Nintendo. Do you think all of these massive games gets announced at one direct presentation, or do you think this is spread out, further into the fall and maybe even into directs in the beginning part of 2022? So please share all those thoughts with me in the comments down below, and then also go into the community tab on the channel before you leave the video, is where I will be asking you a poll of which games you are most excited to see talked about at E3 2021. As again, guys, we're only 1 month away, so we're almost there. It's a very exciting time, so make sure you do those things before you leave the video, and thanks for watching today.